Let's see Louise now.
Right. Louise, could you put on your video? Oh, there we are. Connecting to audio, fantastic. Tara. So hopefully we'll see lots of faces.
Louise, Tara.
Tara.
No, Dennis. No, Dennis. Eat this dinner.
Hello, can you put your videos on, ladies? Connected to audio. Video button is second from the left if you're on a laptop. Hi, Tara.
Hiya.
You let him in, he's all right.
Hi, Bernie.
Oh, yeah. Again.
Good girl.
Here comes Marie. Carol taking a people by pen. Well, I just come in.
Love that lecture there.
Background, yes. Now
Lovely
here comes
background.
Marie. Fantastic. This meeting has now officially started, so I suppose we can you can just say a few words, Tara.
Okay, guys. I'm just sending a link to somebody at the moment.
Okay. Louise, we can't see you. Can you turn on your video button? Oh, fantastic.
Now,
Hi, Louise.
hi, Louise. Just turn on your sound. Nearly there. All right, so we'll kind of start off just by introducing Sentient Rights Ireland, a soon-to-be political party. We would like to thank you for joining us this evening. We are a soon-to-be political party for animal, human and environmental rights. So this evening we've got the wonderful Louise Coleman, who's a guest speaker this evening. We've got Bernie Wright, who's also a friend of our guest speaker and also very instrumental, both ladies in Greyhound rescue and Greyhound awareness as to the exploitation of greyhounds. So whenever Louise has managed to come on there, we'll go ahead.
Louise, we've lost your video.
Okay, let me try that again. I got sound. That's good. Oh, the host has stopped my video. The host fixed my video.
Okay, hi Louise. I have introduced you. My name's Tara. Thank you for joining us this evening.
I can't fix the video because it says that the host is stopped. Can you fix it?
Carol's going to have a look at that now.
Good. Yeah, it says the host has asked you to start your video. Okay, well, start my video. How's that?
Fantastic.
Oh,
good.
Okay, you have sound and video, both.
Lovely. Welcome, Louise. Thank you for joining us and agreeing to be our guest speaker this evening. We're very interested in all the work you've done for years and years. Since 1983, you've been involved in greyhound racing, rescue, awareness of the exploitation involved in greyhound racing and everything that follows suit. So thank you for joining us, and whenever you're ready.
Sure. Okay. Well, I thought that I'd start with just sort of a context, an overview, and then if since we have so many interesting people here, maybe it makes sense for me to like talk for maybe 10 minutes, and then we could do question and answer, or however you want to do it. But
Sure.
okay, that's great.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the context is that I got my first Greyhound. His name is Boston Boy on Mother's Day, 1983. So this coming Mother's Day in May, I think it's May 10th over here this year. It'll be 39 years since I got my first Greyhound.
Wow.
So he was a great dog. He was a really wonderful dog. He was a great big brindle boy. He had raced until he was 5. The guy who had him, he was from a really good kennel. He was at Wonderland. That was a big track here north of Boston back then. So I brought him home. My son Nolan was a little kid then, and he had come out to the track with me to pick him up. And Boston, we had a little Pinto car. And so Boston Boy stood up the whole way home. And he was a great dog. He really, really was. So that was the start of the whole thing. But then what happened was the trainers kept calling me to see if I wanted another one and another one. So we lived in a little apartment in Cambridge near Harvard Square. And so the whole place was full of dogs. It was, dogs, greyhounds on all the coaches, etc. So that's how Greyhound Friends started. And then a lot of really helpful people sort of joined with me, and that's how the whole effort began. But it was in a lot of ways for greyhounds, it was a different world back then. It was like there were so many dogs that needed homes. It was like there were like at least 4 or 5 New England states that had greyhounds. And what would happen would be, since the weather is such here that they couldn't race in the winter, they would all have to leave New England in October. So I started thinking about that as like the October massacre, because in October, all the dogs that didn't have any place else to go got put down. So I ended up finding this really great kennel. It was an old kennel, but it was really great. It was in Hopkinton, which is just a few miles west of Boston. So anyway, that started. I just started bringing dogs in and trying to raise money and keep everything going. But in a way, it's hard to envision it, that there were so many dogs that needed homes, because now in the United States, there's hardly any greyhounds. I mean, it's like, you all have the supply and we have the demand. I mean, there's so many people here who want to adopt greyhounds. And a lot of them, had started out with dogs that I gave them, but those dogs have gotten old and died. But in a lot of ways, one of the things I'm happiest that turned out was I used to take Boston Boy to Harvard Square and just walk around, and people would come up to me and say, "Is that a greyhound or a dog?" It was like greyhounds were exotic. They were like, nobody knew what a greyhound was. They didn't. They really didn't. So one of the things that makes me the happiest is the people, if you have a greyhound in Harvard Square these days, they know it's a greyhound. And they'll come up and they'll talk about it and where did you get it and blah, blah, blah. So that's good. But it was, just years and years and years of scraping by. And but in a lot of ways, things always worked out. Somebody always showed up with, I don't know if you ever heard of Mr. Rogers over in Ireland. Mr. Rogers was a little kid show for a long, long, long time. But one of the sayings he always had was, look for the helpers. And that's one of the things I always did, was I looked for people. And there was always somebody that would show up. And that was always terrific. So they, the circumstance was that greyhounds became more popular, that we were able to use the local media. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So local media was receptive. And Greyhound's got a really good press. So that was really terrific. But it was still a really hard slog. But it worked. I mean, thousands and thousands of dogs, greyhounds found great homes. And in 1995 was the first time that I came to Ireland on a greyhound trip. My family, I have two branches of Irish connections. One is in Clare, it's the Nolans, and the other is in a little village called Grum, which is outside Athlone. And that contingent is still there. They came over. Hi. What's the matter? Okay. I thought that,
Dennis, did you just type something there to Louise?
no, yeah, I couldn't tell if it was a signal. See, I don't know how long. If you could tell me how my time is going, like
You,
when I run.
you can talk away. So
I know, but I don't want to. All right, okay.
Time, don't worry about time.
Okay, okay,
If we get booted out, we'll bring everybody back in.
Well, that'd
So
be
in
fun.
1995, you were
Yeah,
in.
1995 is the first Greyhound trip to Ireland. I had been to Ireland several times before to visit family in the 70s, early 80s, but so this was the first one. And I had come over that time there was a organization called the World Greyhound Federation, and so they met in Dublin at Jury's Hotel. And so I came over for that, and it was sort of funny because I was the only person in the whole place that wasn't a racing person, but they just
Wow.
they kind of looked at me funny, but they weren't mean or anything. But then I tried to, the person that I knew that I'd heard about the most in Ireland was Marion Fitzgibbon. So I ended up, it took a bit, but I ended up meeting Marion, and I talked her into helping with greyhounds, and she and her friend Beverly had found this poor little dog named Demi in a cemetery, and Demi was wired to a gravestone. So Demi was the first dog we brought back, and she was a great dog. So she was the first one, and
Don't start crying because I've just put fresh mascara on.
okay,
And
I will.
I'll join you.
I won't.
Crazy.
Okay. All right. No, but
Breathe. Good girl.
but I remember, like, like she came over in a plywood box, and it had, and that's how they used to ship them. They had plywood box, and the same guy made all the boxes, and they had wire on the front and on the top, but it wasn't wide enough that she could turn around, and so she was like that until until she got here and she got off. A really nice person named Melanie Sharp Bolster, who has a gorgeous house in Kanturk named Glen Lahan, took Demi for a long time and got her well enough to put her on the plane and get her over. So she was the first one, and I worked a lot with Marion for years and years and years and years. And it for me it was always sort of fascinating, because it was like, I went to Ireland, like 20, 30 times at least, but it was, I always just sort of scrape the money together to go, and then I could stay with people, so I didn't have to come up with that. But it was like certainly a very different tourist version of Ireland than the usual version. Like I remember Marion and I once were, this woman had called and she'd adopted a greyhound from Marion, but she couldn't keep the dog, and she wanted Marion to come out and pick up the dog before her little kid came home from school. So we got in Marion's car and we went out to find the place and get the dog. And it was just miles and miles and miles. There was nothing there. There was nobody there. There weren't any animals. There wasn't any birds. There wasn't anybody there. It was like on and on and on. And then finally we got to a crossroads, and on a great, great big sign, it wasn't a directional sign, but on a great big sign, it said, "Dance canceled." and that just, sort of like, what? There's nobody here, but the dance is canceled. And so we did find the woman after a while. We did get the dog, but it was just always sort of kind of a little surreal, a little strange, a little different. But or we would go to Greyhound auctions, and we could only afford to buy 2 or 3 dogs, but we did, and those dogs lucked out. Those dogs came back to America with me. So we had a very, very productive time. And the more that happened, the more connections I was really happy we could make with other people, like people in Spain, like Anna Clemens and her husband Albert sort of started SOS Galgos, and that was 1998, and that was when I went over to Spain, to Barcelona. The Meridiana track was closing, so there were like about 300 Irish Greyhounds all at once. They needed to go someplace. So it was wild. So Anne Finch there were a lot of people. One of the best parts about keeping going is seeing what happens next, but also to have met so many really interesting, hardworking people like Anne Finch. She was, somebody from way back then. We divvied up all the dogs, and they went to a lot of different places, but they all got saved. So, but that was when Anna Clemens came on with SOS Galgos. And along the way, I met Mary Organ, from Dungarvan, and she had a great greyhound named Harry, who so I talked to Mary about it, and a wealthy American from over here named Nancy Whitney wanted to adopt Harry. So Harry came over, and it was that was one of the things that was always sort of really fascinating, all the connections and all the way that the dogs, the value of the dog, the public exposure. Every dog was a representative for all the others, especially in a situation where somebody with the last name Whitney had a greyhound, and Mary Organ made that all possible. It's Mary Organ's birthday today.
Mary Organ.
And then, I just keep, I worked with Marion for a long, long time. And then Bernie and I met at, we were members for a while to the Greyhound Forum. And that was way a long time ago. And so, then when I came over, I would visit Bernie and go to Shelburne, and bring some dogs back from there too. But that was always really interesting. And Bernie's come over here several times. Bernie and I have gotten asked to leave some really interesting places, but
yeah, I can imagine. Bernie's with us here now, and she was actually telling me, I phoned her 15 minutes beforehand just to give her a week.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. We have a chat here, don't we? Yeah, because I one of the things that I was going to put in the chat, and I did send a whole bunch of other stuff too, is a video that Roger Yates made for Bernie for bringing over here. So I'll put that in the chat. And then there's also one of the other things that happened to me later on was that I had ended up being able to rebuild a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous kennel. And in some ways that was a big mistake, because then I had something that other people wanted. I mean, it was like being successful was a mistake. It made me a target.
It always does.
It always does. Oh yeah.
And I know all about it. There's a good few of us here that know all about it.
Oh, I know. And there's nothing worse than I think about a bunch or a gaggle of self-grandizing women who think that they can do it better. Of course, they never did 35 years worth of whatever it took to do it, but that doesn't matter. But anyway, it ended up that I was it was a whole bunch of different kinds of people who were mad at me for things that didn't make any sense to me. But I did get charged, a felony charge against me for animal abuse, which of course I didn't do. So one of the things I'll put in chat is I was vindicated. There was a good verdict. But then they also charged me with through the Attorney General, which was a civil charge. So that took longer and that was harder. But the whole thing was so unnecessary. But like I said, my biggest mistake was being successful. And the other one was thinking that other people value the same things that I do, and that they won't be horrible to people just because they can. But that's how that goes.
But in Ireland at the moment, obviously what we're hoping is that all the racing tracks close, all the coursing, Greyhound coursing ends, and
Right.
we can cope when that happens, you know.
No, that's definitely a major, like, it's sort of a version of, like I was saying about the October massacre, when all the tracks in the early 90s, they closed, and there was like hundreds of them. I mean, and there wasn't any, I mean, there weren't like a lot of adoption groups, and there were all these gorgeous, nice dogs that were just being done in. So I mean, that would be the worst. I mean, it sounds like in some ways that there's attrition. The tracks aren't in Ireland aren't going to close all at once, or if they do, no. But again, on the other hand, one of the worst things that's happened is, I think about it as a Greyhound diaspora, that all of these dogs, especially from Ireland, some from Spain, are going to horrible places. I mean, it was bad enough when they, like here in the States, at least we could find them. They were in Florida and other places, but at least we knew where they were, and there were people that we could talk to, and at least some of them, and get some of the dogs back. But when they're in China or Timbuktu, it's horrible. It is just horrible. So I mean, that's the other thing I'm really interested in working more on, is trying to get the transport stopped. I mean, the only thing I think is going to do it is a lot of bad publicity for the tracks, and a lot of bad publicity for the Irish politicians, which deserve it. So that's sort of where I'm at right now, is continuing to try to make connections with people all over the world, and to do the best I can with. I always think about life as sort of a giant salvage operation. You just have to go with what there is and what can happen. But it is awful when people gang up on people. I mean, the worst thing that happened for me out of all of that was it happened during the pandemic. That was one of the worst parts. But my son was working really hard. He was isolated. He was really depressed, and he ended up killing himself. But if I had not been, it was horrible. I mean, and it's like, part of it was he didn't have enough money, and I had lost my job, so I couldn't help his family anymore. So it was all like unintended consequences. But the people, who started all of this, I mean, it's just awful.
They don't visualize when they're doing this to other people that we're actually all the same. We're all just people.
Oh yeah, all just people doing the best we can. Yeah. But I think it's like, all I can think about is that people must feel so inferior or something, that they have to take somebody else down in order to feel okay about themselves. I don't know, but it certainly was horrible, and it was so unnecessary. And it's like the pandemic being what it has been. It was like everybody was isolated anyway. But we're plugging along. Like I said, the best part of keeping going is seeing what happens next. And it's great to see people, like Bernie and Murphy. Philip
Murphy.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, well, look, I believe Bernie's going to have a wee word now. Murphy,
Good. Okay.
jump in. Anybody, Kira, Alan, everybody. Louise, thank you so much for chatting.
Sure. No, anything I can do.
Stay where you are. Don't be going away. Chat away. I'm so sorry all that happened to you, and I'm so thankful that you've helped so many.
Yeah, and I'll continue on doing it. I mean, it's we'll keep doing whatever we can do.
Good woman. So Bernie, what are you up to, darling?
I don't know where to start, but Louise, I'll keep the stories from Philadelphia to ourselves.
No, you don't have to. No,
I was just telling somebody earlier, we passed by a lovely building going between, where did I land? I landed in Philadelphia and we drove to Boston, right? Wasn't it?
I think that was the deal. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the plan anyway. But I
But that-
remember we passed a building and I said, that's a lovely building. But a half an hour later, I said, there's that lovely building, but it's on the other side. We're going in the other direction. We spent the day going up and down around Philadelphia and back. A lot of bother on you.
Yeah.
He said, but anyway, I won't go into all that. People are probably interested in that, but I remember also you took a dog over for me, a black dog, and I called him Shadow.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember what happened to
Oh, I
him?
did. Oh yeah. Oh
It
yeah.
turned
no.
out to be about 6 or 7 shadows because people saw him in the paper in America. And you kept saying every black dog I sent over was Shadow. So we got home on the premise that he was the famous dog in the paper. Do you remember that?
Oh, excellent.
We made mileage on that one. Like there was
Okay,
a
we
lot of
did,
things
we
like
did.
that.
It reminds me of the time that somebody would, well, never, I won't tell you because the people were watching. Never mind. No, it was like you can have like a dog like Pops. You can have a few different Popses, but Shadow is that kind of thing. Yeah, but they all got adopted. They were all happy, so that's all that mattered. Right.
Yeah, little Timmy, that Nola found. Little
Oh,
Timmy,
yeah.
do you remember?
My Timmy, of course. Oh yeah, Irish.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now he, Nuala Donlan found him
Yeah, Nola found him, yeah.
in Blackburn.
We got him over.
Yeah. Yeah, I had him for 15 years.
Yeah. Well, have the regulations changed, Louise? Do you remember the last time I was over and we couldn't
Oh
get
no,
dogs?
no. That's the main problem in Massachusetts. I mean, for one thing, the guy who is in charge of the agricultural regulations hates me. So I can't bring dogs into Massachusetts. I can help other people do that, or I can get them to other programs in other places. But yeah, no, that's not great at all. And of course, the CDC regulations haven't helped either, even though dogs can come from England. So I guess, they can come from Ireland too, but the Center for Disease Control has a list of 150 countries, including Spain, that the dogs can't come from.
I have a lovely contact who sorts out sight times. I've known her for about 35 years. She's in Connecticut.
Who's that?
Gail Vitale.
Okay, good.
I'll send your details.
Oh, no, that helps. It all helps because, like I said,
Maybe you'll like her.
Oh, good. In Ireland, you've got this supply. You've got, hundreds, thousands of greyhounds, and here there's a huge waiting list. It's bizarre.
The only thing is, there's a lot more people doing greyhounds. Sorry.
Here. Oh yeah, there are. Yeah.
Now it's
What do you mean,
changed.
there or here?
Here.
Here. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
What is the flight time to America for greyhounds and the process? Roughly.
I don't know what you mean.
What would the flight time be?
Oh, it's not.
from
It's not.
Ireland?
It's not hard. It's like 5 hours.
Oh,
Five.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
it's
not.
7 altogether.
Well,
but
maybe it's between 5 and 7, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad at all.
yeah. But
No,
about
they oftentimes land in New York these days.
New York,
Or,
yeah.
the Galagos, when they come over, lots of times go to Pittsburgh because SOS Galagos has an affiliation with people in Pittsburgh who have a holding kennel, a boarding kennel. So the Galagos can stay there. So that's good.
Super. Yeah, we're completely overrun with all types of sight times in Ireland at the moment. Personally, I've got about 8.
Wow.
One who is called Valentine because she was thrown over an 8-foot brick wall on Valentine's Day.
Ooh.
6 weeks old.
How is he getting on?
Oh, she's doing well. She's doing well. She just headed into foster. Her skin scraping came up negative so far for mange, so we believe it's just severe malnutrition. extreme worm burden, a small injury to her head where she was either hit before she was thrown over the wall. She's starting to cope mentally. Even in the short period of time that we've had her, she's started to pounce a little and reverse and pounce back for playtime. So we're hopeful, we're very hopeful that she's going to make it, even though her neglect is extreme, you know. So yeah, this is going on constantly. Like we don't know where all her siblings are, haven't a clue. We sent people round, couldn't find any siblings anywhere.
And do you know,
Pardon?
you know who done it to her?
No.
No.
She was thrown over an 8-foot block wall into somebody's garden, and of course they called us, and that's all we know.
My God.
Obviously 6 weeks old, not microchipped, a tummy the size of a football full of worms, and her future's bright now if her body can cope. Mentally she's starting to cope.
Yeah.
Very scared of being left alone, and which is completely understandable. So this evening she went into her full-time foster, where she's going to be able to, you know, get comfy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
God.
so this is obviously happening all the time. Murph, would you like to say chat about
I just want to.
Oh, sorry, go on, Louise.
Oh no, I've got to sign in again. It signs me out, but it's not a big deal. I'll just sign in again.
Okay, you're here.
We have about 7 minutes left. So if this cuts out, we can just rejoin again. Hopefully
Okay.
it will work.
Murph, are you in the States?
Yes, indeed, I am. Calling
Hi.
everybody out. Actually, I'm located outside. My name's Philip Murphy. That's my phone name. I just realized I don't use the Zoom on my phone very much. I'm out and about, but I wanted to jump in and especially with Louise being involved here, who's a dear friend. And it was funny to hear the stories. I'm actually outside of Philadelphia to hear Philadelphia stories. But I'm from Boston, which is how I know Louise.
Right.
We
Oh, that's
we're big fans. We started back in, I guess, 2006. My wife Ann and I bringing on rescue greyhounds, and I think Ann counted up over 20 have come through the house, and we have 5 now in the house. And you know, just none of that would have happened if it wasn't for Louise and all the great work she's done. And can't say enough good things about her as a person and what she's done. And we're working hard to kind of push through some of this really terrible, you know, PR that's really unjust, and, you know, being proactive to work against that. But we foster now. I just want to comment on follow on Louise's comment about you know, there's now waiting lists, which is just mind-boggling because so many of the U.S. tracks have closed. We're on the New Jersey, Pennsylvania border, and we work closely with Greyhound Friends New Jersey, which were inspired by Louise's Greyhound Friends in Mass. And yeah, there are people, you know, waiting for the dog. So, you know, I was really encouraged to hear, you know, Louise and others mention the next frontier, or the opportunities to you know, disrupt the flow of the dogs from Ireland and other places in Europe to places like China. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And you know, given that, you know, figure out a way to get them here, you know, among other places where there's a demand, if you will, for adoptions here, given that all the tracks have closed. When people find out what wonderful, you know, companions and family members they are, you know, they fall in love and we're definitely available to support that. We do, we live and breathe in our home, the rescue net, including fostering now. And I see that it's really what, taking away from today, just that the next frontier is disrupting that flow to Asia. That's just got to stop.
I see. In Ireland, greyhounds are segregated almost. Say for example, the Department of Agriculture's yearly statistics on dog pounds. So you've got a separate one for greyhounds.
Oh wow!
All right, now in Ireland, I don't
Wow.
know about America, but in Ireland, animals still are not considered as sentient beings. And I think as soon as that comes into play, then we're going to be able to disrupt the transports,
That's great.
properly.
That's really good. Great.
And that's, as Sentient Rights Ireland, we really want to push ahead and get forward so that we can get this right for animals to be
Wonderful.
considered as sentient right beings.
Great.
So I think our time is running low. Lovely chatting to you, Murph. It's great. No, it's great. It's great that you guys
great. No, he is totally great. Yeah. And Phil, if you want to mention your affiliation with the Vegan Society.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, I do a lot of work, supporting the Vegan Society. I'm also active in Buddhist communities that should be, obviously vegan and are not, for all the cultural reasons. So I'm very active in advocating. In fact, there's a presentation today at a big center in Massachusetts. So that's a big part of the work I do, but it's in everywhere that I show up. Also Animal Rebellion. I know my colleague Tracy Vance is in Ireland, she's actually an American who's repatriated, married an Irish guy and lives in Dublin, but also active with Animal Rebellion, and just everything we can do to your point about recognizing sentience from which flows, membership in the moral community, and you can't treat any member of the moral community as a, property. It's unacceptable.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we live and breathe it here. Thanks, Louise.
You're welcome.
Do you guys have you guys heard of a group? I think they're called Food for the World, and they feed they're American based.
You mean well-fed world, maybe?
Maybe
a well-fed world,
again?
yeah.
Is
Dawn
that 50
Moncrief,
cents?
that's her organization, if that's the one you're talking about. Really great work.
Is that like feed one person for 50 cents plant-based foods?
Yeah, no, I think that's a different organization. They're more, a think tank and, activism on a broader scale than that. But that's what came to mind when you said that. Sorry.
Okay, and what's the group you were talking about?
A Well-Fed World, and Dawn Moncrief is the founder.
Okay, Well-Fed World.
Yeah.
Dawn
Moncrief, Moncreif.
Okay, thanks. No, because there seems to be some amazing work going on. Karen, Louise.
Actually, a couple of questions. One is this webinar is being recorded, I hope.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Great. And I was hoping I might be coming over to Ireland mid-April. I also work with some peace groups, and the peace group that was protesting against the Shannon Airport being used by the Americans going to Afghanistan. They're on trial April 22nd. So I'd love to come over. Maybe by then COVID will be down such that we could have an actual meeting. Who knows? Whatever.
Hi, Louise.